Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon. My name is Ara Firnezian, founder and CEO of Stratasys and Innovate for Good. I welcome you all to our exciting panel discussion on unlocking impact investment opportunities in Africa. Our panelists today have vast financial asset management, strategic consultancy, and investment experiences in emerging markets and industries across healthcare, agriculture, food, financial inclusion, crypto assets, fintech, reinsurance, sustainable finance sectors, and so on. So please allow me to introduce to you Njay Ayuk, Executive Chairman of the African Energy Chamber, CEO of Pan-African Corporate Law Conglomerate Centurion Law Group, and the author of several books about the oil and gas industry in Africa, including Amazon and Wall Street Journal best-selling Billions at Play, The Future of African Energy and Doing This. We have as well Dr. Bhaskar Dasgupta is the Associate Director of Business Development at Abu Dhabi Global Market, focusing on financial services across emerging markets and Europe. Dr. Dasgupta is responsible for overseeing the development of the banking, asset management, private banking sectors, including key areas such as crypto assets, fintech, reinsurance, sustainable finance, and digital. So our session today will discuss the tremendous growing attention of mainstream global investors in impact investing, with its current global market size estimated at $715 billion with 20% growth each year. The last 18 months, COVID-19 crisis has accelerated further impact investing, driven by healthcare sector, sustainability, agriculture, and education sectors. Despite these growing trends, the COVID-19 crisis will weigh heavily on Africa. Estimates show that recovery in Africa will cost some $154 billion. That's on top of the pre-existing annual SDG financial gap in Africa with $200 billion. So we will discuss and share insights on what is driving this global trends in impact investing, why Africa is lagging behind, how this can be managed to reduce the funding gap, and how Africa's capital markets can attract impact funds to accelerate local solutions to its current challenges and advance its impact-driven entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem. To start with, I would like to ask you, Njay, what are the impact investment trends, constraints, and opportunities in Africa?
I think, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to actually have these kind of conversations, because with the work that you do and really bringing, some common sense to the market and the global industry, and especially with Africa, it is something that should be commended. When it comes into impact investment opportunities and constraints around Africa, you can, just look at COVID. You could start seeing where are the COVID millionaires, where are the COVID solutions and everything. Africa is still the continent that has the most available, I would say, issues that need solutions. What do I mean by that? Growth in Europe and the United States have stagnated, it's grown. But in Africa, in the sector where I walk in, you're seeing a big amount of people, 800 million without access to any kind of energy. Talk about impact investment. Anybody who can figure out how to get those power into those communities will make a lot of money. Will find it will be great investment. And so you continue to see a lot of problems looking for solutions in the continent. And I think this in itself calls for us to be to start thinking a little bit outside the box and be more purpose-driven. From the north of Africa, you see so much commodities trading, but coming down south, agricultural basics, looking at gas, looking at other things with infrastructure, that you're going to see a lot of trends that are going to move around. But within the continent itself, the Africa Continental Free Trade Act, it is what I would call the biggest impact trend right now, because you have now the largest free trade market in the world, 1.3 billion free trade market. It just was signed this year, And that creates a big, massive opportunity for Africa.
That's really an amazing figures, and from the opportunity side. Pascal, what do you think? I mean, how do you look at it from UAE, assumingly, the opportunities in Africa today on the points that NJ was talking now?
Thank you, Ara, and great points, NJ. I'm, of course, speaking from the perspective of Abu Dhabi global market, and what I see in my jurisdiction, and also the conversations that we see insofar as Africa is concerned from the Abu Dhabi perspective. I have to say that, yes, COVID did have an impact. This was a pretty unique situation with respect to both the demand and supply shocks that the world has impacted. But then, if you look at the underlying economies, Africa has got what I would call as all the positive factors, and the free trade agreement that that NJ referred to is just one example. If you look upon the entire globe, and if you are looking at where the growth is going to come from, where is the population growth, where are the people who are going to be buying refrigerators or cars, wanting to educate their children, all that growth, a substantial portion is going to be in Africa. So from the perspectives of opportunities, I completely agree with the fact that there is a huge amount of opportunity in Africa. Now, if you want to take a look at the investment trends, I mean, let's put it in this way. Just over the past couple of days, the first thing was that Abu Dhabi's Sovereign Wealth Fund, Mubadala, has just announced an agreement with BPI France to set up a fund which is going to invest in Africa. Today itself, I had a call from a private equity fund which is interested to set up an Africa-focused fund for SMEs. And this was just over the past 2 days. So I don't have to actually talk about the broader overall piece, but then that has happened. I mean, in 2019, ADIA hosted an Invest in Africa conference where we had exceedingly clear indications and appetite to invest in Africa. Now, the one thing that obviously is there is, if you're talking about constraints, I think I'll point out to 2 or 3 big ones, especially when you're talking about large-scale investments. You don't usually have those large-scale projects that are available to hoover up, let's say, $500 million or above investments. And for the smaller ones, obviously, you do have some challenges around, for example, data availability, connections, flights, things like that. But I don't see them as unsurmountable. Those are just something that you just need to navigate. So overall, quite positive and bullish about what we are seeing in terms of investment in Africa.
Bhaskar, you just said earlier that there will be a lot of requirements to do with from this education and the social requirements. But from why to consider social and environmental factors in investment decisions? And does this make business sense, let's say, for local and international impact investors? And how Africa can benefit from this trend itself?
I think it is absolutely vital, because if I look at this from a simple commercial perspective, and if you think about it, you have got the fact that the investment thesis of investing firms is now starting to get more and more aligned with the SDG and ESG goals. Plus, as I said, there is a dearth of the large projects. So when you start looking at it from the perspective of social and environmental areas to invest, first of all, they have a huge amount of investment opportunities. But on the other hand, to try and answer your question about why consider social and environmental factors in investment decisions, Look, reputational risk is very, very high. And these days, investment decision making is getting highly evolved. People are not just looking at investment decisions purely on the basis of just blunt economic return. They also have to consider the social, the environmental, the governance impacts. And it has been proven on study after study after study that firms who undertake investment decisions whilst considering and actually investing in social governance and environmental factors are actually going to end up with a better rate of return, more consistent rate of return, less disputes, more take up. So it totally makes business sense, not just for impact investors, but any investors. In fact, I would say that I'm starting to see that impact investment is becoming mainstream.
And Jay, how do you look at this? I mean, Bhaskar was looking at it more from international, let's say, a dimension on a local ground. I mean, how do you see the environmental and social factors will impact the decisions in South Africa, and whether you're seeing this trend is moving forward, or you're seeing more, you're relying on grants to support this trend?
I think Bhaskar is right. I put it this way, you got to think global and act local. And if you have to get that going, then we can be successful. But also, we need to be good stewards of the environment. We have to come in from a human perspective. We're just here to take care of this environment and what we've been given. And people should be our ultimate push when it comes to this. But let's face it, Africa can no longer live and rely on grants and handouts and foreign aid. It is not the future for Africa. Africa has to deal with investment that looks at building people up, whether it is through education, whether it is through the right kind of community development, whether it is looking at, when you look at energy, you say, how do you get the right kind of projects that brings people along? Look at some communities where you have mining or energy projects, they abandon agriculture. We have to look at all the totality of the circumstances and drive that. But we can no longer, this idea that this continent should be the basket case for aid. So you go into some places, you see aid workers with nice fancy Prados and fancy cars, but the communities are still in poverty. Then social justice and how we look at it is going to be the defining issue of this decade. We're dealing with a world where they're talking, who would have thought about the biggest push right now on climate change and energy transition, and looking at how the whole ESG issues happening around the world. This is welcome. We shouldn't deride it. We should welcome it, because everybody deserves that. And that doesn't just go into, as Pascal said, doesn't just have to go in, it doesn't just have to go only into looking at investment decisions strictly on financial basis. But now, for once, we in business and the corporate community, and not just in the international community, but in Africa, we've been asked, how are you impacting the community? How are you doing things that go beyond your profit margin? It's not just all about profit, but how are you lifting people up? And because when we do that, we cut out on some of the crises, some of the civil issues and the civil rights issues that get abused, human rights. We frown upon it. I think everybody around the world was disgusted by what happened in the United States with George Floyd. When you saw this man had a knee on his neck, because we have awoken, and this is good. It is a good thing, and business welcomes it. And we should take that opportunity to drive a community and a world and an Africa that is as good as the people that live in it.
That's a great observation and reflection, NJ. So today we spoke that there is a funding gap. And the only way, I think, to move forward, we need to see more public and private finance that need to be galvanized, or the partnership among them to accelerate the move to meet the SDG gap and the COVID recovery in Africa. Because I believe, as you said, aids are not is going to be a help if there will be no private sector engaged heavily in that, whether locally or internationally. I think it will be the gap even further bigger and bigger over time. So how do you see the appetite there, NJ? And the same question will go Bhaskar, because I know you have some experience here as well in UAE as well and abroad about seeing how the private and public sector partnering to tackle solutions. So let's look at it further first from NJ's point of view on what he's seeing.
That's the only way for it to work in Africa. We have governments which are big bureaucracies, which sometimes mean good, but they don't have the capabilities. They don't have the technical know-how, and even the financial. Even sometimes they can collect your taxes, but they will not have. They will not know how to use it. So you need the private sector to come in, and this is why when you talk with in the last segment, we talk about social empowerment. This is why you need to empower the private sector, and at the certain space in smaller communities. You have private sector actors acting together with government to drive that. And you're going to see more of that, and we've seen a lot more of that happening in Africa. For 8 to 9 months, our skies were closed. So you had to have African private sector, small businesses, really taking on bigger roles and driving that. Public-private partnerships are going to be the way to go. Whether you need small-scale projects, whether you need bigger projects, that's just it. I come from business. We have a little bit less trust of government running everything. We believe that the private sector should run things more, but also we need to also be a little bit humble to know that there are some things and there are some roadblocks that governments can help you open. And especially when dealing with our infrastructure deficit. Our big infrastructure deficit creates that. But when you start having this public-private sector partnership, it closes the gap for Africa. And I tell you why. There are so many jobs that do not have qualified people to do in Africa. We have to bring experts from all around the world to do it. But also there are so many people without jobs. So when you look at that, when you have a public-private sector partnership going not just into big infrastructure projects, big energy projects, big pharmaceutical projects, but we have to also look at that in something as basic, but most important as education. Because if we train our people to working together with governments and even through the private sector, then we really start getting into building that Africa that we deserve.
Thank you so much, NJ. Bhaskar, how do you see it as well from your side and your experience in this, the partnership between the public and private sector?
So I'm going to talk more from the perspective of private capital. I think the way public capital has been deployed, has been talked about and discussed, and the DFIs are all over the place. So I don't think I can add any further value to that point. But for the private finance or private capital, there are a few things that I need to talk about because you need to be a bit smarter about this. And frankly, from my perspective, what we need to start looking at is to start not messing around with a few $100 million here and there. We are talking about substantial amounts of money that have to be mobilized. So you have to be quite ambitious about it. And for that, you need to be smarter about how do you get the private capital into this. So the first sector that needs to be mobilized is the private wealth or family offices. They are frequently quite sector specific, but they are also willing and happy to write big checks, can take big risks, and actually put boots on the ground. So from my perspective, what I see is the wealth and the private office and the family wealth that is present in Abu Dhabi and the structures that they're using. For example, down the east coast of Africa, in tourism, in agriculture, in those infrastructure, there's quite a lot of appetite. So you need to be focused on trying to get to them. But the way to approach them is, for example, different from how you want to mobilize private capital, let's say from institutional funds. The issue with institutional funds is they are very heavily biased towards, for example, public equities. And the public markets are, let's just say, not that much available. So forget about that. You have to start going into the private equity sector. You have to go into the venture capital sector. The PE VC fund is a very, very good area for you to explore. And in my experience, that's where the biggest source is to mobilize private capital. The issue for that comes up is that you are talking about private capital investors who want to put in a structure that they're safe, comfortable, and able to deploy from whichever jurisdiction that you think. And that's why we are seeing the presence of quite a lot of these large institutional PE funds who are open and willing and able to invest in Africa. The last piece that I'm going to say is that I think it has been proven over the last 50, 60 years that the traditional way, and NJ, I completely agree with you that trade, not aid, should be our perspective. But we literally have to invest hugely into innovation, into fintech, into impact tech, into SDG tech, because investment in these startups, this is how we are going to start finding out different ways of deploying capital and impacting SDG by innovative ways. So the three things that I talked about, one is target the family offices, second is go after the PE funds, third is VC funds and innovation to actually start investing in African originated or destination investments in new business models, new SDG models, new impact investment models, so that they can actually create a path for bigger pools of capital to follow down those channels. So that's how I believe that private capital can be galvanized to accelerate the move. And we have to be ambitious, frankly. We are still not ambitious enough.
Thank you so much, Pascal. And I think the point that you have made on the innovation and entrepreneurship, I think this leads to our final question here today is how this can be accelerated. I mean, NJ, you're in the market there as well. So how you think you can accelerate the social innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem in Africa to attract these impact funds and grow local solutions for local problems? You know, like in the past, you know, we have seen what Kenya is doing, what Nigeria is doing in fintech as well. We've seen how the trends are going from the local startups that they are doing. Really, some of them are doing some exits as well. So how do you see this trend moving? I mean, of course, we cannot look at Africa as a continent, as one country, which of course each country has its own advantages, some disadvantages. So how do you see this ecosystem will accelerate, and how much time do you see this all is going to work if we follow, let's say, Kenya and Nigeria as an example?
We need to do it now. There needs to be some political will first, and we need to create an enabling environment. Kenya, which you just mentioned, started M-Pesa more than a decade ago. And that fintech became the leading fintech in countries like Germany, and it went around the world. That is the money transfer, the mobile money transfer, and that is moving all around the continent. But we need to start now. Governments have a role to play. They need to create transparent regulations. You need leadership that pushes, that has a political will to drive it. Not just talk, not just platitudes, but actually pass legislation, but put some skin in the game. Put a little bit of money in it. It doesn't matter what kind of money you get in, whether it is a little tax that you would use, then it would attract people. It's hard for me to go to Pascal and tell him, listen, I will need you to invest $1 billion into this project. And the first question he asked me would be, so how much do you have for yourself? I said zero. Then it's like, if you can't even believe in what you're doing to put $1, why should I put $1 billion? And that's what we need to start thinking in Africa. We need to look inwards. You know, I always say we have been so used to just when someone criticizes us on issues around mismanagement or corruption, we start shouting. No, we need to start keeping transparent organizations. So what do we do? We cut out on some of the corruption. We ensure there's transparency. Some of the things we hide in, we're not even supposed to hide. It's just like, show your tax returns, show your financial statements. What's wrong with it? What are you ashamed of? Put that out there. Let them know. They'll find a way. It doesn't matter. So that needs to come in. And when you create an enabling environment, you create an ecosystem that sparks innovation everywhere around the continent. It is infectious. Right now, we should be thinking, are we going to get the next big innovation coming out of Africa? Are we going to get the next Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates? They should be coming out of this continent because of what the environment that we created and have created for them. That is what we do. And I'll leave you with this, we need to take that self-critic within ourselves as Africans and say, we can no longer accept to just look at things and say, we are just mirrored images of our continent. No, we're not mirrored images. I do use a mirror every morning, but mirrors are to correct what you see, not reflect what you see. We need to start correcting what we see so that Pascal and his money people can start looking at it and say, we're willing to take that risk because capital goes where it is welcome. The sanity of contracts is important. We're willing to take that risk. The capital goes where they know there's been some groundwork already laid, and I am going to do that. So we have work to do in Africa. It's not late. We get in there. But someone like me, I believe in the word fast track. We need to fast track it. We need to move it because we have a continent with a lot of young people under 25. 70% of the continent is under 25. We need to really drive things so that these young people can have opportunities in Africa and work in Africa and grow in Africa instead of trying to cross the Mediterranean desert, the Sahara desert or the Mediterranean to go out to Europe to search out for better shores on the streets of Europe. We need to change it. And our time is now. There is no angel that's going to come out there to do it for us. We need to do for ourselves what we expect others to do for us. So when they come, they would see a people that are growing and they would respect you and they would work with you and they would treat you with the dignity and the integrity that you deserve.
That's an amazing statement, if I may say, and an opinion. And I truly believe at the end, we need to take responsibilities towards our countries, towards our economies, towards our young people. And there is no other alternative. I think every country has an opportunity to grow. I mean, we have seen many countries around the world, they don't have even resources as rich as Africa, and they have done amazing development, and they are among the top maybe 20 or 50 largest economies in the world. Bhaskar, how do you look into this from your perspective as well on the same subject?
So I think the thing that NJ said is absolutely right. What you have to realize is that Africa has to compete for capital. So I'm not going to talk about the local presence because that is you folks know much better than that, and NJ has very cogently argued what needs to be done. I can talk about how to attract, let's say, the capital that you can see in and around my jurisdiction. First is local presence is very important. There's 50,000-60,000 people who come to, for example, Abu Dhabi, and I'm talking about funds and people with substantial investment opportunities, and they come and meet the various sources of private capital over here. People are coming here and they know they can raise money here. So that's the first thing that I would say is that especially for African funds or family offices or people who are looking for project financing, they need to be in a place where there is money. Because you're competing against a global demand. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say to accelerate it is to let people know and make it exciting, make it a bit more interesting. You talked about the resources. That's all very fine and good, but talk about the growth. Talk about the better quality of life that people are aspiring. Talk to people about the fintechs that are happening. You talked about fintech, for example. Fintech is one of the sectors where the supply of private capital into that sector is at a multiple times that of demand. That's why the valuations are out of the world. And guess what? I can very confidently say that Africa is missing out simply because it's not been able to articulate or mobilize its fintech startups or fintech firms, mid-size or even bigger ones. You talked about M-Pesa. For every one M-Pesa, there are 100 or 200 who are just not getting funding. So those need to be exposed to a global audience. They need to get into the eyes and ears of VCs and PE funds and other people who are absolutely happy to invest. They just don't know about it. So the two things that I'm going to say is good, consistent local presence. And the second is raise awareness and use the technology. Zoom, start doing webinars, let people know this is what exists. Pull in people. That's the reason why we are here, to make sure that people know that there is appetite for Africa, for startups, for projects, for SDG goals, for impact investment. But we need to know about them and we need to talk to people. We can't go traipsing around Africa all over the place, not at this moment. So use technology to reach out. All right.
This is, I think, thank you so much, Bhaskar. I think the way you're looking at it in a very practical way and I agree with you. I mean, I've been looking as well into many hubs around the world and ecosystems. And at the end of the day, transparency and awareness about existing opportunities, this is the first thing to start. Like any business, you need to advertise what you have. Otherwise, how would I know? So I think there is a path along the way. I've seen an amazing, so after our conference on the second day, we have an impact pitch day. So we are working with budding African startups in fintech, in agri-tech, in edutech, and many other, and we are connecting them as well with investors. Because we believe that, and the way our work is, we believe that local problems should be dealt with local businesses. We can't rely on foreign. Foreign funds will always come if, as Bhaskar said, if you have the willingness, because everybody wants to create value for their stakeholders, right? To shareholders. Wherever there is a good opportunity, we'll go there. And I think I love the way you structured it, and I love your passion, Anjay, on the way you see things forward. To conclude our session, I just need 1 minute. What would you say to the people listening to us, whether they're startup or investors? Anjay, and then Bhaskar, if you can give us later on as well, 1 minute, just an inspiration for everyone who's listening to us.
If you're a startup investor, if you're somebody looking out to really make an impact, the time is now. Africa could be seen as a place where people see challenges. I see solutions. I see opportunities. But all of us, we do have a role to play. A role where we can take a continent that everybody wrote off. But that continent is producing people, everyday people, from Cairo to Cape Town, from Nairobi to Dakar. They are setting out there. They are going to build a future that is going to be as beautiful as the people that live in it. The question you have to ask yourself is, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of those that say this continent would never make it? Or are you on the side of those that say that we can pick up and we can rise back up and really drive? Are you on the side of those young people that could give us independence without any kind of phones, anything, and they could still shape our continent? If you are ready to go out there and make it be a success, the time is now. Africa is yours. Africa is home of a diverse group of people, but now we need that diverse opinions, that diverse capital, that diverse strength to carry us and build a future that is decent for all of us, because we can change what history has always taught about us, and we can be like what Mother Teresa says, a pencil in the hand of God, writing our own history. Let's go do it. Let's make it work.
Bhaskar, please,
Let me just chip in.
Message,
Yeah,
please.
just my final thoughts. Look, let's put, I think what NJ said was absolutely right, but let me end up with an actual actionable plan. I already said that, there is quite a lot of appetite for it, and I talked about the startups pieces that they're doing. We are currently mobilizing one of the largest gatherings of investors and fintechs, which obviously includes impact and sustainable finance, et cetera, to come to Abu Dhabi end of November. And that's where, as I said, one of the largest groups of investors, and I think we've already mobilized about 150 of them, and they're growing rapidly, to come and meet. Let's do it. I'm very happy to help. If you wanted to reach out to me, very, very happy to explore and signpost you to the right places to go and check out what we can do to help.
Thank you so much for everyone joined us today for our session. I would like to thank so much NJ and Bhaskar for your amazing and inspirational thoughts and ideas to bring in more impact funds and accelerate the social innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you.